Hi, I'm Eric George.
And I'm Lindsay Mayer, and this is Where Coffee Gets Spilled, a conversational podcast where careers get human. We spill career stories one cup at a time through honest, reflective, and fun conversations.
Grab your cup, relax. You're not running late. Let's just spill the beans and let the convo percolate.
Well, Lindsay, we have a very special guest today,
I'm
and
excited.
yes, I'm very excited too. I would like to take a moment to introduce Laurice McGinnis Lincoln. Laurice is an MSOL, has over 20 years of experience in quality improvement and workforce development, specializing in equity, inclusion, and organizational development. She applies research findings to best practices and has successfully implemented evidence based innovations statewide. Laurice has led culture assessments, quality assurance, and strategic planning projects, resulting in significant workforce improvement. Her leadership roles include positions with Milwaukee County, the Department of Health Services, the Department of Children and Families, and she is currently the Enterprise Equity and Inclusion Director for the state of Wisconsin, which is where Laurice and my paths have crossed. Laurice also, super exciting news here, was named a top 50 culture and inclusion professional from Oncon Icon Awards, which honors the top culture and inclusion professionals in the entire world. Super cool achievement, and we congratulate Laurice for that. Laurice is also a former
Yes.
colleague of mine and a friend who I have had so many conversations with, some silly and fun, some serious about work, some about parenting. And it is a great pleasure of mine to welcome you on the podcast, Laurice. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate this opportunity to talk with you today. It seems weird to be centered in the conversation. I'm used to, trying to give that space to others, and so it seemed a little awkward at first to realize that that's what the conversation was going to be about, is gonna be about me. So I had to step back
Yeah.
and think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
I think that's a fine reason for us to actually want to talk to you about this is that you do have so much
Hmm.
of that outward connection where you're facilitating and empowering and encouraging and developing, and all those things I think are things that when our listeners, our audience hears these things, they take value away from that. And I think in
Yep.
some cases they may see themselves, in other cases they may just be inspired by it. And so I think whichever way it lands with them is perfectly fine. But so this is I warmed you up on this one before we jumped on. So little Laurice, when she was a child and thinking of what adult Laurice would be like, what did you want to do when you grew up? And how close did you get?
Um, I got all the way to choosing a major when I got to college. Um, so I wanted to be when I was really small, I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to be a lawyer because I always wanted to champion and help people. And it was like
Oh.
that's what I saw lawyers doing on TV. So it's um it's kind of like where you learn about these different
Hmm.
things that people do. You see it and you say, "Oh, I think I wanna do that." And then decided, maybe I should be a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. I can help people that way. So by the time I started got to college, my first inclination was to become to enroll in to get a degree in psychology.
Mm.
And then I said, okay, so I'm going to pick this because I have to pick something. But then I'm going to go and talk to, the counselors that they have at the school about what it is I really want to do and who I am because I didn't have a lot of role models outside of um, entrepreneurship because my
Mm.
parents ran their own businesses. Um,
Mm.
Mm.
to give me some
Interesting.
idea about different types of careers, that were out there. I
Mhm.
didn't realize all of the different opportunities and things that were there. So once I started talking to the career um, counselors at the university, we realized that that's not really what I want to do. And so
Mm.
we went a different path, but it
Mm.
all connected back to, kind of like me understanding more about who I was as a child and what was important to me at that time. And I realized that, you know, that the things that I was seeing my parents do. So I'm the youngest of six. My mother had two sets of twins back to back.
Oh,
And then
wow.
she had another child, and then she had another child. So I I was the youngest. To let you
Wow.
know how my parents worked that out. Now, I don't think this was planned, but my brothers, who were the first set of twins, they came back from Vietnam and they had a baby sister.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
that
That's
was
an
like,
age gap.
what is going on? You know,
Yeah.
mom and dad. Well, I know it
Yeah.
wasn't planned, but at least I know I was loved. So
Yeah.
Yes.
Gosh,
um
I know what it's like to be the youngest of 4. I don't know what it's like to be the youngest of 6, though. Ooh.
so actually, in 2 weeks, we're gonna be celebrating my brother, my oldest brother who's still with us, his 80th birthday.
Wow.
Oh, that's so
So,
special.
I'm, like, sitting here and it's so funny because whenever we used to go places, everybody thought that I was his daughter,
Sure.
especially when I was really little. It's like,
How
"Hey,"
did he like that?
I would
You
say
know,
I would always
El
correct him and
Althea's friend called me her grandpa a couple weeks ago, so I feel like I resemble this remark here a little bit.
Oh, wow.
yeah. I I loved it. It was unique. I got to be
Mm.
the flower girl in his wedding.
Oh.
I was the little flower girl in pretty much all my siblings' weddings because I was so much younger than them. And you see pictures of them where they're getting married and there's this little girl standing next to them and it's like, "Oh, who is that?" And it's like, "That's my sister."
Wow.
It's kinda unique in that. But I think that, like, I started to realize that I wanted to help people and I wanted to do things to to make possibilities for other people happen. So because my parents were entrepreneurs, my mother was running an in-home childcare center. My father had his own, he was like he was doing construction and he had his own business where he would do home improvements and things like that. And so I started my own business where I was tutoring the other children in the neighborhood. Mind you, I was
Ah.
probably about 9 or 10 or 11, but I was helping them with their homework and their parents would give them a quarter to bring to me to sit with them. And so I was making money and I was running my own business and after school every day when I would get home from first grade, I'm helping all of these other children with their homework. Some of them were older than me, but it
Wow.
was quite alright, and I enjoyed that, I enjoyed, um, doing that work and seeing what the change was, and I think it was in talking with the counselors, the career counselors, I realized that my focus was more not about personal achievement, but impact, you
Mm.
know? It's
Yeah.
like I was not so concerned with it being a personal achievement, but what impact, more about the impact. What impact am I having on all of these people that are coming to me for assistance, you know? So with the kids in the neighborhood, you know, their parents were just floored with how much better they were doing in school, you know, how much better they were reading, how much more focused they were about school. And I I appreciated that even at that young age. And those were the
Yeah.
conversations that I had with that career person where we
Mm.
started to try to figure out where my mind really would go and feel the most nourished and able to contribute to what I wanted.
Um, so yes, I will tell you that we'll circle back to the concept of that service and that impact piece that you were
Mhm.
describing there well, because I think that that is, from what I know about you, that's woven in throughout your career, and I think that's worth circling back to. But one of the things that stands out to me about you every time I think about you, Laurice, and this comes up with the career counselor and the talk of the majors and things like that, is your love for Michigan State and the impact that your school has had on you, as well as that
Yeah.
connection. If you care to share it with your daughter, can you tell me a little bit about how some of those formative years and those experiences with tutoring and exploring and things of that nature, how that integrates with your experience at school and just kind of how that maybe launched you into your career path or what impact that's had on on your early career?
Sure. So my my siblings, um, I think my one brother has associate's degree in civil engineering, and he took that and went with it, and he did great things. He's my brother's a very accomplished person. Um, but of my siblings, my other sister, she went and she also had a associate degree in accounting. So she
Mm.
became a bookkeeper, that type of thing. She went on and she did great things with that. So I was the first person in my family to go to a four-year university. And
Mm.
so now I think that the the idea of helping people and being a part of something bigger than myself having an impact on others translated when I got to school. So Michigan State University wasn't I was accepted at a couple of universities, but there was something about the campus when we went to visit that it just it almost enveloped me, you know? It's
Mm,
like it took me
Mm.
in and hugged me
Mhm.
and said, "We want you here. We need you here." And, so I was so excited that when my father dropped me off, and while I was there, I did involve myself in things around campus. So I became the president of the, dormitory, quad where we lived in. I became the president of the Black Caucus there.
so
And we
cool.
would do different events and different activities to bring people together at that
Mhm.
in that group. Um I got involved in, some of the things that they would do. They would do these, dance parties where they would bring students together and they would practice routines, and they did the Thriller, and they did, those types of things, and
That's
so
perfect.
we would do these big shows on
Oh, I
campus,
love
and
it.
it was just exciting to, you know, be there, and even though I didn't dance myself, it was like, you know, supporting somebody or, you know, somebody who I knew that was going to be rehearsing. It's like, "Hey, I can bring you your books, or I can pick this up for you, I can do that, or I know where you can find this outfit, or I contributed clothes to the cause." But it was I think that the thing about the campus being an enclosed campus, not one that's like part of the city, it's like its own community
Mm,
and it's
Mhm.
self-sufficient in that it's its own community. And
Mhm.
there's so many opportunities there for you to to try different things and to figure out what you're good at. It's like they have
Mhm.
all of these different intramural teams. So I found out that even though I'm not very athletic, I could play volleyball very well. And so I started playing intramural volleyball. And but bag the ball or dribbling, no, it was
Not your thing.
it was not happening. But then, it was like other things like too. I love art. I love to paint. I
Ooh,
love to draw. And I found a community of other people who like to do that. And so it was, talking about that. And the university supported all of these different groups and activities. And again, like I said, it wasn't part of the city, it was its own
Mhm.
community. And
oh,
it just really helped me to find my sense of self and my sense of pride in
mm,
who I was and what I would bring to the table. And it helped me to start to think about, you know, how I can contribute more,
Yeah.
how I can be a
mm,
part of something bigger than myself.
yeah,
And so yes, Michigan State is definitely a school that I would recommend. And I definitely recommended it to my daughter. She went and
nice.
she came back so full, you know, um, and with so much confidence that I knew that it
Mm,
was a worthy investment and a good choice for her.
Yeah.
'Cause,
that's
she just decided, "Okay, so I'm gonna go get my master's degree. I'm moving across the country to Seattle." And she left. And now she has, like, a whole community there. She has a community of people that she's built around her, that she's friends and groups and, networking businesses, and she's just like, eh, it's like, wow. I'm just so impressed with what that school brought out in her and she took with her to in the rest of her life, so
Yeah, those
that
and I know, Lindsay, I can tell you got a question at the tip of your tongue. I'll just put a little point on this too, and then I'll toss it to Lindsay. Over to you, Lindsay.
yeah.
But
No, you're
I think that variety of exposure to
yeah.
experiences, activities, people, both you and your daughter benefit from that greatly. And I think
Mhm.
it nudges you closer, even if it's unconsciously, it nudges you closer to what you're meant to do, because the things that you are both interested and talented, um uh, you those are the things that you start working towards, intentionally or not. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting subcurrent on that piece there, Laurice. To you, Lindsay.
Yeah, no, I wanna ask you because, I don't is maybe other schools too, but, my husband went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and he has that same kind of Badger pride, I'll just say. So I know there's a rivalry there between Michigan State, but do you think it's a Midwestern thing, or do you think it's more of getting yourself involved in the school? Because I think about like my husband, went to sporting events and, he built friends from classes and things like that. And I know you have to put yourself out there, but I guess it's maybe a twofold question. Do you think it's one, a Midwestern thing, and two, that you explored and you put yourself out there to get those different experiences?
I think it's both because there are people that, I know that I went to Michigan State with who are
Mhm,
very now, I'm actually an introvert, but they would, like they did not join in all of these things. They went there, they went to school, they focused on, you know, class, things like that. They had
mhm,
maybe 1 or 2 friends that they hung out with. They didn't do too much. But when you see them, it's like, go green, all the way. They
mhm.
still feel, a connection to the school. And,
Sure.
every once in a while, you see them with their Michigan State shirt on or a hat or and I think that it's also if you do connect with the Alumni Association, they
Mhm,
reach out. They keep you connected, whether
mhm.
you wanna be or not.
bringing people together and that facilitation part of
Mhm.
your the planning, the executing, and the facilitation part of your career, and the service part of your career. A lot of that kind of revolves around this idea where there are all sorts of differences among people, and I think the way that we show up and work well with each other, work effectively with one another, is figuring out how to
Mhm.
embrace those differences. So I don't know. Tell me kind of what your
Mm.
thoughts are on that in kind of the workforce and how you've approached making an impact with others and how that really benefits organizations in your mind.
Well, I'm gonna say one of the things that I did in during my career was I worked for an organization called NACI, the National Association for the Education of Young Children,
Mm.
and I worked for them. They had this program of accreditation where they, accredit early education facilities to a higher level of quality, delivery, and standards. At one point in that time, I before my starting before working for this for government, I did run an early education facility, and I
Hmm.
went through the accreditation process several times an as an operator, a director at that facility. And that's when I became interested in what they did and how they did it and how they made improvements, how they understood and evaluated quality. And so that's why I was interested in working for them. So I was working for the company out of Washington, DC, and I was still local, but I would have to fly there and they would do training. And a lot of what I learned there was how to separate, you know, ob- the objective observation from subjective
Mm,
Mm.
points of view.
Mm.
And they were very focused on that because that is how you are able to then measure and see what is actually happening, not what, people are feeling or where the emotion or what they want you to see. And so
Mm.
when you're doing these accreditation visits and you're observing, all of your observations have to be objective.
mhm,
You know, it's like
Mm.
what are you looking at? What did you see?
Mhm.
Not, "Oh, the room is so nice and nice." What does that
Mm.
mean? Nice
Mm.
has no concrete meaning, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, describe what the room looks like. And I think that learning that skill is something that has helped me to be able to separate, to have difficult conversations, and to be able to
Mm.
separate story from fact.
yeah,
To be able
That's huge.
to be in a room and do an assessment around the culture or the climate of an environment and separate, what are the norms that are impacting the work environment up as opposed to what is the gossip and what are you telling me about what you're
Mm.
feeling,
Hmm.
that is something that you want to project onto what is
Mm.
going on in the environment. And how do I get you to step back from, you know, whatever emotional trauma, baggage, whatever it is that you're carrying with you, for you to see clearly, what is actually happening here. And then once we have clearly identified what the issues are, now you can make change. Now you
yeah.
can address
Mm.
what needs to happen. And that skill that I learned at that organization and that I applied in doing that work is something that I bring into the work environment. So when I'm doing a, a respectful workplace investigation and I'm listening to both sides, it's like someone will say to me, how do you stay unbiased and neutral?
Mm.
It's that approach of, understanding, so this is what you're feeling, but this is what happened.
It's
Okay.
so funny that you say that
Yeah.
because we were just telling stories about our perceptions of
Mhm.
differences among the 3 states, Michigan, Illinois, and Wisconsin. And
Mhm.
those are very much like the room is nice example that you had. They are
Mhm.
just our experiences, one person, one moment in a time. My
Mhm.
experiences of Elroy, Wisconsin is not the same as the other 300 kids that went to my high school or whatever it was. Like they all view it differently. And what the
Mhm.
reality is some mix of that, right? And so yeah, that's fascinating how that how you approach that and how that impacted, because I think about it in terms of that approach with evaluating the student rooms. It seems like it's very similar to a lot of the work that you've done in government.
Hmm.
That's a useful transferable skill is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I appreciate, that, I we also did a lot of trauma-informed care,
Hmm.
trauma-informed
Mhm.
practice, and, um, applying that same principle to that. It's like, let's talk about, you know, story versus facts.
Hmm.
Okay.
Mhm.
To helping somebody address and understand the trauma that they are feeling. Because emotion can cloud and cover everything there, even what you're
Mhm.
really seeing right in front of you, you know?
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so it's just always been important to me to learn and experiment with different methods of how we can create change and how we can make things better. And the one thing that I have found is that it always starts with a difficult conversation about separating fact from story.
Yeah.
Mm.
And and once you are able to do that, once you're able to start to do that and have that difficult conversation about the change that's needed, about the issue that's at hand, about the anger that you're feeling, about your fear of the
Mhm.
change to begin with, that's when
Mhm.
you can start to hold on to something tangible and say, "Hey, you know what? I I see here it is. I've got it. That's what I need to focus on. Not
Yeah.
Yeah.
all of this other stuff that's stirring in the brew over here. Not all this feelings and emotions, Um, yeah, I tell people sometimes it's like when we're talking about approaching something or changing something, and I'll tell them, I say, you keep buying a ticket to go back and visit the museum of the past.
We need to close that museum.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe, maybe you need to stop purchasing those tickets for a while and start
Yeah.
investing in something that is unknown to you. You know,
Yeah.
I said going back to revisit the past is comfortable, even if it's miserable. You still feel
Mm.
comfortable in it because you know what it's about.
Yeah, it's the safety of
It's a
yeah.
safety. Even
Mhm.
even pain is safety. Going back to pain is safety because you
Mhm.
understand that pain. You've experienced that pain. You can relive that pain. You can handle that pain. It's the one that you
Hmm.
don't know that you fear.
Mhm.
And that's where we need to focus. That's what I need you to focus on. And that's where we need to go with this. So,
Yeah, I think it was and I'm formulating my question, I think, as I'm thinking through this, but I know in your questionnaire you talked and you just mentioned this about fear. Like, how, you have such a good perspective on like fact versus fiction. Like, was that hard for you to, is it a work in progress? And I guess how would you teach somebody else how to do that better?
it's something that you're always working on because you
Hmm.
have to be self-aware. And so being self-aware is not a one-time, okay,
Right.
I'm self-aware and I'm good. It's something you have to continually work on. So it's the same with this separation. Having difficult conversations is the first conversation is really hard. But as you do them, you get better at them. And that is the best way for you to start to practice the separation of story and of fact and fiction, is to have those difficult conversations. Um, the thing too that I appreciate is there's this book called um, by Cashman called The Pause Principle. And in the pause principle, he talks about how important it is to stop even in some of the most difficult conversations and to have that moment of silence in there where you pause and you give your mind a chance to catch up with your feelings.
Mm,
And it's like when you feel like you can't have that space in there, but that space sometimes is where people start to mumble through and they start to come to a realization of what it is that they're actually trying to say or do. And when they don't have that time to take that breath or take that pause, they're stuck in that emotional forward that continues to interrupt the ability for you to access, you know, what is really happening here because
yeah.
their emotions are in the forefront. So the pausing is one of the best ways in any type of conversation, especially a difficult conversation, to give people an opportunity to to step back and let their emotions catch up with their thoughts catch up with their emotions.
Like the and that pausing can be really uncomfortable for people, right? That's not like a natural thing that requires some intention. And difficult conversations are really uncomfortable for so many people. And that I do think is a Midwest nice thing. That's one of those things where it's like avoidance of the reality of things that are unpleasant. And that can create really toxic situations. And I think, anybody who's done any kind of professional development or conferences with people that talk about growth or growth mindset, there's always the point made that you have to get to that edge of discomfort in order to, or push into discomfort in order to grow. And I think that that's backed up in your point here, where you have to lean in and be willing to have difficult conversations in order for things to grow, whether you're growing as an individual or within a team. Um, how do you navigate that discomfort? How do you observe that discomfort occurring in workplaces? I feel like I suspect that that's probably one of the common things that regularly um, comes up in your professional life.
hmm I think that there are people who approach um, difficult situations very passive aggressively. There are people who avoid, you know, a lot of times you hear people say, we've got initiative fatigue. It seems like we're
Mm,
always starting something new. Starting something new is a way to avoid dealing with the actual problem that's there. So it's like, oh, let's start something new. Let's figure out a new way to
yeah,
do
That's
this. And
fascinating.
then they go and they start a new way to do it. They come up with a solution, and the solution is about some difficult conversations. So then they kind of like, hold out for a little while, and then they say, "Well, we need to bring another work group together to talk about what we talked about this talk about." So they're constantly just going back to the beginning of it, as if to say, we're stirring all the ingredients together, but we're never going to actually turn the stove on. We're
yeah,
just we're just gonna
Yeah.
just gonna keep stirring it up, because we're working really hard at stirring everything together, but we're never really gonna turn the pot on and let it heat up because we don't know how to deal with that heat. We
yeah,
don't want to address that. We don't wanna be the person that people don't like
Mhm.
because we're holding them accountable. You know,
Mhm.
we don't wanna be the person that people, um, um cast out of the group because we challenge the group's norms. You know, we
Mhm.
we wanna be at Wisconsin nice, or we just have not yet found a place where we're okay with being by ourselves. Sometimes you have to walk away from something that is not benefiting you in order to find something that's better for you. And if
Mhm.
a group of people is a place, if a group of people that you're spending time with, you can't honestly express yourself, or you can't, talk to them, or you can't have a difference of opinion, then are you really flourishing in that group, or are
Yeah.
you just existing?
Mm, that's such a great point. I know there's another person that she does networking things, Susie Moon, and she talks about finding your community. And, if you do some of these things and they don't feel like your people, it's okay to walk away. And that's kind of what I think you were just hitting on of like, if it's not a fit, if you don't feel like you belong, or you want to be different, like step back and do that. That's such a great thing, such a great point to make because I think people are so afraid of doing that.
Yeah, I think not just the walk away, but the other point that you made there, which I think the walk away point is great. That's perfectly valid. I don't want to take anything away from that. But the other piece of that is that sometimes you can recognize as a leader or as even a member of a team that change is necessary. And it takes an act of
Hmm.
courage to apply a little heat to the ingredients so that you can actually
Hmm.
cook what you're intending to cook. And
Mm,
I think that there is like that act of courage is something that some leaders um, avoid to their own
Hmm.
detriment, to their team's detriment. And I think at some point,
Hmm.
the question that I feel like you're getting at here is, what are you so afraid of? If you're a leader and you're afraid of upsetting people or you're afraid of holding people accountable, but you know that's what's going to be the catalyst to having the cake come out of the oven or to have the whatever you're cooking on in the pot be cooked, you got to summon that courage somewhere. And if it's difficult conversations, like you
Hmm.
said, they always start hard. They always start hard.
So, Larissa, this has been great chatting with you. And I just have, we're going to wrap it up here, but just one quick question about if you could share one piece of advice or one thing that, our listeners could walk away with, what would be that thing that you would share with them? And I know we've covered a lot of things, but if you could give that like one piece that would help them out.
I would say that when your vision in whatever mission or values you have for yourself hit a wall, you know, that wall is not necessarily a wall to stop you. It's could be a wall to have you pause and reassess and then find a different path forward. It doesn't mean you stop.
Mhm.
It just means that you need to reassess and find another path forward. You know, you have to be able to find the strength to overcome when people try to stop you from finding what it is that you're looking for in your life. Because people are all looking to find their own place. They're looking to find
Mhm.
their own worth, their own value. They are looking for themselves, and they may be putting these things in front of you,
Mhm.
not intentionally, you know?
Mhm.
And some may be doing it intentionally. You never know a person's rationale. But the thing about it is that you have to decide for yourself, what do I need to do now? Pause, think about what you need to do, reassess, and continue to find a way forward. Just keep pushing. Just keep pushing.
Laurice, thank you so much for your time today.
Yes.
So many
Yeah.
words of wisdom and nuggets in here. And I will say, just
Totally.
on a on a personal level. So many of these very types of words of wisdom and nuggets were um, thought provoking, as well as just steadying for myself in the times where we work together. Just always appreciated being able to come to you and have really honest conversations about situations that we were encountering or situations we were observing, and to look at them in different ways through different lenses. I just think it was really, really helpful to me. Very glad to have you join, and even more happy to call you a friend, Laurice. I do value that quite a bit. So, Lindsay,
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
yeah, thank
No,
you so much.
thank you, Laurice. I agree with Eric. Like, I love your perspective on things, and I'm walking away with so many thoughts. It's amazing. So thank you for sharing that with us today and our audience. And so if you heard something that you liked, please follow us, please like us, share a comment. We'd love to hear from our listeners, old and new, just to keep growing this and sharing what's resonating with you. So go ahead, like and share
And
and
subscribe.
subscribe. Yep.
Yes, thank you so much.
So
We'll see you guys next week.
yeah. See you next week.
Bye bye.